Alrighty then. What video do I want to make today? Moda Nepson? Yeah, Skyward Wings show. Oh my gosh, that opening looks so good. And it's coming out November 13th? Well, looks like that's my video for November 14th. Wait a minute. Did I ever make a video on... No. Definitely not, no. Really? Huh. There's no... Really? I never made a video on... How the fudge did I not make a video on that? Wow. Well, guess I know what video I'm doing today. Zidane Daney, Electro Ninja here, and welcome back to Electro Ninja's Lab. In today's video, we are talking about Epithet Erased, which, yes, I didn't realize that I never made a video on this amazing series. And it was Amoda and Nepson that reminded me that I needed to make this series. Primarily because of the fact that Epithet Erased and Amoda and Nepson actually have a lot in common. You'd be surprised, actually. It's really weird to think how much they have in common. But basically, the one thing that they really have in common is that both of them were created by amazing YouTubers who I have looked up to for a while, and they were kind of what inspired me to go into YouTube more full-time. Obviously, I didn't really learn about Jello Apocalypse until a good way into my career, and shortly after that was when he started making Epithet Erased. And Skyward Wing, well, he was one of the first YouTubers that I actually started following. Unfortunately, now I think that his channel might be completely gone, but I'm not 100% certain. But yeah, he retired from the YouTube game to focus entirely on Amoda and Nepson. While Jello is still doing quite a bit more with his YouTube career, and while his main focus is absolutely Epithet Erased and his voice acting career, he's still doing YouTube, which is honestly pretty cool. But honestly, yeah, I'm actually really surprised that I never made a video on Epithet Erased. I think one of the big reasons was because of the fact that when I first watched it, it was only on, well, it was on YouTube. I didn't really think that I was going to get Verve yet, so I decided I would wait a week each time and watch Epithet Erased on YouTube instead of watching it as it aired over on Verve, which I'm kind of regretting, but honestly, I think it was fine. It was honestly a fantastic show that really made me excited to see what they were going to do in the future. The problem that I think a lot of people might have with Epithet Erased is its art style. Unlike other cartoons, this show doesn't really have as much animation as you might expect. The entire series is kind of built off of the style that Jello kind of made for his channel. Basically, showing clips in the background while having characters basically dance around, and yeah, they'll change poses every now and again, but it wasn't even a puppet situation. It was more of just like cardboard cutouts. Something that is reminiscent of some older shows, but and a lot of older puppet shows, but it considering the environment that we are in for shows nowadays, I think that a lot of people might have skipped over this if they didn't know about Jello in the first place, or they weren't going to Verve and suddenly saw it on their page one day. And even that seems unlikely because Verve isn't too great at promoting stuff. I mean, sure, they probably did promote a decent amount back when it was actually releasing, but not too much, which is honestly pretty sad to think about, that this amazing series probably didn't get as much attention as it could have. And yeah, honestly, I kind of wish that I had done a video about it back when it was actually releasing. From what I understand, he is working on the second season as we speak, probably getting it wrapped up enough so that it can actually start up next year. Now, the show did actually release back in 2019, but it was near the end, if I'm remembering correctly. And obviously, with 2020, nothing's getting done. Obviously, some of it is getting done, but due to the situation, he's probably doing a lot more work than he originally expected. And the rest of his team are also doing a lot more work than they expected because of the fact that they're all having to communicate with other methods than, oh, yeah, we're in a studio or whatever. I don't actually know how he created the show in the first place, but that's kind of the point. That this show didn't get as much attention as it really should have. The first thing to actually note is that, well, the main character is not one of these characters that you see behind me right now. These are all just random characters that show up throughout the series, and are actually super important. But the real important character, the main character, is Bear Trap, also known as Molly, who honestly is the cutest little thing ever, and she's just gonna get into a ton of trouble in the future, and I'm so excited to see how that's gonna work out. But yeah, Molly is a little girl who happens to have an epithet, meaning that she can say the word dumb, and then suddenly everything turns quiet, or people become, well, dumb. And she's upset by this, as well as the fact that her father basically makes her run the toy store, which, wow, just talk about father of the year. That's a slow clap, because actually he deserves a one finger slow clap to really show that he is a terrible father. But then in the throughout the first chapter, she meets a few characters. Specifically, she meets Giovanni Potage and the gang of bonsai blasters, and their chaos just ensues. These characters are the most hilarious characters ever, and it's honestly just the funniest thing, just seeing all of these guys just cause so much mischief trying to get this medallion that's meant to take away freaking epithets. And it's kind of sad, but it's also kind of cool. Giovanni's is soup, which basically allows him to make soup. Then there's also some other characters, which I honestly forget their names, which kind of sucks. But but their epithets are barrier and shatter, which I think, I don't remember if that's actually the word, but the point is that that's what their quirk, well, I guess quirks is probably a good way of explaining it. But basically, these people have these quirks, and they work as quirks, and they both do good, but they also can do a lot of harm to the user. It's honestly kind of interesting to think about because of the fact that it's it's a good way to actually look at the universe of My Hero Academia. While they have epithets in this, it's actually pretty small the amount that actually have epithets, equivalent to maybe 50% or less have epithets. And everyone else that doesn't have an epithet is called a Mundi. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if a good majority of the Bonsai Blasters are all Mundis. And the kids that are actually mentioned, that we actually get to see at the very beginning of the show, it is about 50% of them actually have epithets, and the rest don't. Which is a bit sad and interesting, to say the least. And now, for sure, yes, the majority of the characters that we see through this do actually have epithets. The police officer who is on number 5, she has a building quirk, or building epithet, which I'm forgetting what it's actually called, but it is kind of interesting to say the least. The bull up there for episode 3, his is something along the lines of dream. The guy for 6 is gold. The girl for 7 is something about getting a perfect shot. But the fact is that all of these characters have very, very interesting powers, and gives them each a really good chance to shine. For this story, for the first season, all it is simply trying to get a medallion from a secret from the museum, and then trying to sell it later in the episodes. And while that is really interesting, it builds up for a second season and probably more to basically show that there's going to be some really interesting things that are about to show up. These characters all get developed so well. Even bad guys that aren't really important to the story get a really well developed story, even if they only appeared for maybe like 5 minutes in the show. Obviously, all of these characters get tons of development, and we get to see who they are, both inside and and what has changed them. Even if it's not necessarily shown in flashbacks or anything. And another interesting thing about this is the fact that even with all of this stuff, the animation, when it is shown, is honestly some of the greatest animation that I've seen. Especially considering the fact that this was made by YouTubers, and they use it few and far between, basically only using it for really big boss fights. The rest of it is basically simple puppets with simple poses. Kind of similar to how a lot of YouTubers do their content. And I think that this is kind of an important piece of media. By showing that this amazing show can do really well, it might be the platform to basically say to the rest of the world, hey, look at YouTubers and realize they are not as simple-minded as you may think. They work hard, and a lot of times, yes, they are working on their own to make all of the content that they create. And so what if they are considered less than top notch? You would be the same if you were working by yourself, making very little money, and all the money that you are making is usually coming from places like Patreon. Big thank you to my current patron Sheeny, as well as anyone else who decides to go over there. But a lot of YouTubers, the only money that they're really getting in is from Patreon or from their merch store. There's not really any other ways that they can get money. Yes, YouTube does give them money every now and again, but they have to do almost everything themselves. They have to look for sponsors. They have to apply for monetization, which can be taken away at any reason, basically. This shows to the world that with Verve taking on this show, even though Verve is not as big as many other things, it shows to the world that YouTubers are not terrible. They're not the bottom of the barrel as many seem to think they are. But instead, they are working extremely hard to get these things done. Only the big ones really get the chance to make something like this. But I feel like if this show becomes popular enough to actually make it to a service besides Verve, which in itself is a bit of a niche situation anyways, then honestly, I think that this show can show the rest of the world, hey, look at us and realize that we are not weak. We can do this stuff that we have been trying for many, many years. YouTubers have been trying to get out of this hole of YouTube for a long time. And it's only a few YouTubers who have actually succeeded and made their way onto the big screen, be it by being in an animation. Again, actually, I'm going to bring up Jello. Brendan Blaber, who is Jello Apocalypse, is one of the primary villains of frickin' My Hero Academia Heroes Rising. If that's not a huge example of what YouTubers can do, then I don't know what is. Another great example is ProZD. He is one of the biggest voice actors, not necessarily in the world, but he has been doing a lot of really awesome voice acting stuff for a lot of cartoons recently. And these shows, even though many of them are kind of niche, it does show the world that YouTubers should not be a dirty word to talk about people who think that they can make stuff in their basement. It's people who have worked their butts off to attempt to get into a world that doesn't want them. That's what a lot of YouTubers have to do, and that's what they've worked on. And honestly, I really hope that this show, even though it's really only going into the animation community, I hope that this is something that will actually help them a lot more. But for now, we're just going to have to wait and see. See what these amazing creators continue to do. But anyways, guys, hopefully you guys will give Epithet Erased a watch. And even though I didn't really go too much over what the show is, I think that it was kind of necessary, because this show is less about what it is and more about what it represents. And hopefully you guys will actually go and watch this show if you haven't. Unfortunately, I'm not sponsored by Verve, and I probably won't be for a long time, because under 1,000 subscribers. So if you guys actually want to help support the channel, then please subscribe, because it would be so helpful. Once I reach 1,000 subscribers, I can actually start doing a lot more with my channel. One, I'll be able to get paid from YouTube, and two, it will probably be a lot easier for me to find sponsorships, like Verve, if I can get them to look at me, as well as other amazing things that I've talked about in the past, and will continue to probably talk about in the future. But anyways, guys, hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If you have, definitely leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and of course ring that notification bell. Of course, if you have any thoughts or theories, make sure to leave them down in the comments below. If you are going to leave a theory, make sure to say theory review somewhere in your comment. And of course, if you want to support the channel even more, then definitely head down to the description, and check out all of our links down there, including our merch store, our Patreon, and our social medias. And I already mentioned this, but big thank you to our current patron, Sheeny. But anyways, guys, I've been Electro Ninja, and I will see you guys next time. But on!